Hello and welcome to Focus on Israel, which looks at the Holy Land. I'm Paul Calvert.
Psalm 46 verse 1 from the New King James Bible says this: God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble.
I'm with Madeleine Kerzner from Nation to Nation. Now, Madeleine, what is Nation to Nation?
Well, it was from Chronicles. First Chronicles talked about, and they went from nation to nation, declaring his glory to all the earth. And God really, first of all, he gave me a song, and then he really showed me that that's what my ministry was doing in those days anyways. I was traveling from nation to nation on crusade, open air crusades, as they call it. And not the Crusaders, but, open air witnessing things. And basically, it really is about the mixing up of cultures. In other words, I'm from a Jewish culture, someone's from another culture, and celebrating us in our nations as well. But a lot of it is about the teaching of the Hebraic understanding of the feasts and the understanding of the Old Testament in a way that really maybe people have not looked at from that angle. And that's kind of where I come from, nation to nation.
So does the church today actually understand its Jewish roots?
Can I be honest with you? Before I think I'm going to go there, before October 7th, 2023, I would have said yes. But once it happened and I started to see the reactions and I started to see the silence and I started to really understand what was around me, it surprised me a lot that they don't really understand their Jewish roots. And I don't think I could have seen that in any other way other than the trauma that happened at that time. And I would say the silence that happened at that time.
So you'd say October the 7th exposed a lot and the mood changed as well, did it?
It was a turning point for us as a Jewish community. I mean, I remember it was my birthday on that day and I had a big celebration happening and a lot of things went wrong, funny enough. And we didn't know the fullness of what was happening at that time. We just heard some news reports. And I remember saying to my friend the next day, something has changed permanently. We're not going back from this. This is something for our Jewish community. But what surprised me was the immediate backlash, the immediate rejection of so much of what had happened as if it didn't happen. And then I started to see we are in a spiritual warfare like I've never seen. But I always say to people, Paul, remember this, to the Jew first and then to the Gentile. What you see happening in the vine will happen to the whole of the vine. So we really do need to be alert and understand that we're in a spiritual warfare.
Did it change everything on October the 7th? Did everything change for you?
I come from a Holocaust surviving background. So my family died in the concentration camps. My dad was on the Kinder transport. And I work in that environment here in the UK with Holocaust survivors and lots of people of that generation. And I can't express the trauma that day caused in the hearts of so many people. Because they knew it. They understand when people have got an intention to kill, maim, such barbaric ways that they were doing. We did not underestimate that. But it also brought a trauma to the community. It brought something that was, I didn't even know it was there. But when it came, you felt traumatized. More than what even happened, it was the trauma of events that kind of re-triggered everything.
And of course, it didn't just affect Israel, it actually affected the whole of the world for the Jewish world, because the whole of the Jewish world is battling with anti-Semitism now. And all from...
every Jewish person around the world feels different today. Everyone that I've spoken to. And even if you were Jewish and not a secular Jew or just Jewish and not really having any religion at all, you still know the change because people treat you differently. And there's this... No one knows how to speak about it, but I truly do believe it's a spiritual warfare around us. But I also, I'm going to be honest with you, Paul, I was saddened to see the church not supporting us the way that it should have done. But we have had a few that have, and I'm very, very thankful for those few. They've really brought encouragement to us tremendously.
You've seen what's happened through the Holocaust, through your own family. So did this actually shock you, the response after October the 7th? Or was it not surprising that, they were going down this route?
That's what's so scary is, you see, my dad came from Vienna and he always said to me, what happened to me was not the Nazi soldiers. It was the residents on our street. It was our neighborhood that attacked us. They were the ones that spat at us and really turned on us. And I never really understood that until October the 7th, when actually people that you knew that were friends with you were suddenly aggressive to you. And you're thinking, I don't even know exactly what's going on in Israel. I'm not even over there. And you could really get that understanding of something turning. I mean, it was the people that handed over the Jews to the Nazis. You know, we were the victims of within the community. I think the only nation that never did that was Denmark. That was the only, and we celebrate that. They actually hid the Jews, but every other nation handed them over. The neighbors handed them over. And that was what the feeling of October 7th felt, is you weren't safe within your own neighborhood in the United Kingdom, which was a very strange feeling.
Do you feel safe today, even 2.5 years on, nearly 3 years on?
I mean, I feel safe in the sense of I don't think there's something violent, but I feel such an animosity, such a hatred towards us, such a not wanting us to be there. It's an amazingly horrible feeling to have. But then, you know, with Jesus, we understand, you know, that's what he went through, that rejection. And I think it's something we're all going to have to learn how to deal with and manage, including the Christians.
It's quite ironic. You say you get this feeling of not wanting to be there, yet if you went to Israel, they wouldn't want you to be there either. So where can you go?
Exactly. I mean, being a Messianic Jew is an interesting thing. You've got it from every level. But, you know, God makes us resilient, and we've got a good, strong, small community here, and we do look after each other. But I really see it from such a prophetic angle, although it's an event that happened within my Jewish community, and it's an event, I've got to tell you something, Paul, the Jewish community are extremely resilient. We are truly overcomers. I'm telling you, as much as I can see the trauma, we've seen this before. And I think in a funny way, that kind of makes you resilient, because it's like, oh, here it comes again. There's a resilience to it. There's a defense to it. But truthfully, we are a peaceful people. We just want to live our lives, as they say. So it's a really strange thing to see an older woman who has been through so much in their life in the 1930s, scared for their grandchildren, scared for, are their children going to be able to go to a Jewish school in London and be safe? Can they even live here anymore? And that's a really sad thing for me to see and observe. But a lot of people are standing their ground, and we're just hoping that the church might wake up a bit too.
Now, you've already spoken about your father being part of the Kindertransport. For those who don't know, what is the Kindertransport?
It was a rescue, really, of children. The British government said that they would take 10,000 children, and that's all they took. There was a lot more than that, and we know that there was many that were rejected. It was just over a 2-year period. My father comes from an Orthodox community, and his story was, my dad put me and my brother on a train, and we didn't know why. And I realized at the time, I suppose he couldn't explain what was going on to his children. They didn't know why they'd been put on a train to London. They came into Harwich on the Vienna in December 1938, and then they came to London, and they were sent to a Jewish orphanage school, Orthodox at the time, which my dad then left and became secular, actually. He rejected that. But truthfully, it's an amazing thing, because I also work within the Association of Jewish Refugees, and I'm actually on the Kindertransport Committee. And we do a lot of meetings where people can meet up, where 10,000 children were rescued. They had to be sponsored £50 per child, which was a huge amount of money in 1938. I've discovered my sponsors from my dad and his brother was the chief rabbi, because they were Orthodox. The chief rabbi had a fund to rescue some of the children.
Did this save his life?
It did, yes. His own father was picked up in 1939, taken to Buchenwald concentration camp, where he was held till 1942 in the spring killings. He was murdered and in the concentration camp there.
So after the war, was your father left as an orphan? And could he go back to Vienna if he wanted to?
He didn't want to. This is what I'm saying. He really was so angry because it was them. He told me it was the Austrian people that were attacking us. He said, I never even saw a soldier. It was your neighbours on the street coming at you, humiliating you, jeering you down the road. So when you were getting beaten by another group, they were all saying, go ahead. And and you had to wear a yellow star. Actually, he didn't even want me to go. So when I first visited Paul later on in his life, he was very upset that I went to Vienna, but I wanted to find out more about the family because he didn't have all the details. But the Kindertransport was such an amazing, beautiful thing that the British people did. But it closed, of course, at the end of 1939 when the World War broke out with all nations. And we know that over 1 million children died in concentration camps in the war. So we know that there was a lot more that could have come. But they let 10,000 children in, and we're thankful for that.
So what happened to his father and his family?
Madeleine Kerzner died in Buchenwald concentration camp.
That's your father's father, is it?
My father's father, my father's father. His father, my father's great-grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, died in Lutz ghetto. He had a cousin called Bertha. She was 13. She died in Lutz ghetto as well. She couldn't get out. I mean, a lot of people don't see how many people died, not just in concentration camps, but they were sent to ghettos in Lutz ghetto where they were starved to death, basically. Basically, there was no food and they died that way. Many didn't get out. I mean, whole ghettos where no one came out alive, even though they weren't actually killed, but they were killed in a different kind of way.
Obviously, you weren't born and you didn't meet these members of the family in the past. So does that actually affect you today, even though it's like someone you don't really know in some respects?
In many ways, it affects me probably more because when I grew up, I didn't know the full story. And my dad, unfortunately, didn't have totally the full story, or maybe he held back the full story to me. He said his father died of polio on the way to a concentration camp. That's how he told me the story. But he always had a pain in his eyes. He was a quiet man, very strong man, but very quiet. But there was a pain. So as I did 20th century history and saw the Holocaust in my school, I couldn't believe that was my people. I couldn't believe the shock of it. Was really hard for me to fathom, and my dad didn't want to talk about it. So I kind of grew up with that determination to find out more. And of course, the more I found out, the harder it got to understand. So in a many way, you take on the trauma of your father. I took on the trauma that he did not necessarily express to me. But in many ways, the injustice of it all, the silence of the world for quite a long time, it was happening. And like I say, so many countries didn't stop it. But then the World War broke out, and we're so very thankful that some of us at least survived. I wouldn't be here today. So yes, I think you find the second generation have taken on a trauma coming from their families.
How easy was it collecting some of the roots of these stories?
I was very surprised because when I got to Vienna, they had everything for me. I went to visit them in Vienna. They had every record. The one thing that's really strange about the Germans, they were cold-blooded in their recording things. They were just very precise about what day they were picked up. And they did something very strange with my grandfather. The records are he died in the concentration camp in 1942 of the spring mass killings. And when I got to Vienna, they told me he had a grave. And I said, what do you mean he had a grave? And he said, well, the Germans did something very strange. They sometimes sent the ashes back of a person back. And your grandfather's ashes were sent back to Vienna. And there was a couple, I don't think they were Jewish, but there was a couple who bought land in the cemetery in central Vienna, and they allowed these ashes to be buried. So I was so surprised to find out that my grandfather's ashes were buried there in Vienna. Now, why the Germans would do that, I really don't know, but I had all the records, and we had originally come from an area in Ukraine today, and we were chased out by the pogrom there at the turn of the century, and we all went to Vienna, the first place that the next persecution broke out first.
Wow. And what happened to your mother's side of the family?
My mother's side, her side was Catholic and Jewish. So that came in from her mother, but they were from Russian. The Russians, now that's a different story, and I'm not sure if it's a correct story, but she's Goldberg and Goldsteins, and they were in Northern Ireland. My grandmother was born in Northern Ireland, the Jewish community. Our story was they were told they were in America. But they were actually in Northern Ireland.
Wow.
We don't know whether that's true or not, whether that was a true story, or whether they just didn't want to travel any further. But yes, they were in Northern Ireland, but they got heavily persecuted. They changed their names to Phillips because of the persecution, and they went over to move to Glasgow, where my mother was then born.
Wow. So your family has seen all this persecution and murder and death, and today we're seeing a rise in anti-Semitism, and your family suffered so much. Are you worried for today in the UK?
I think the word is, I don't know if the word is worried. It just breaks my heart. I'm heartbroken because the pain. You know, trauma is a terrible thing. And when you've experienced trauma, it just reignites, doesn't it? You know, they say, what do they say these days? Triggers. It triggers something. And that's what it's doing. When you see marches saying, kill them, whatever, we are taking it so personally within. It's hard to stop that narrative. I don't know whether there is a stopping of the narrative. But what we have to be as Jewish people is to be more resilient. We're going to have to be a little bit like Joshua, be bold and courageous. We're going to have to stand strong and just trust that life can continue on, even though I think it is going to be very difficult to be Jewish at this time. It really is in the West.
Do you work with the Jewish community down there in London, and what are they thinking today?
I do. Well, let's put it this way. My mum goes to the centre on Golders Green in Jewish Care, and that's where the attack happened. And she said to me the other day, why have we got police escorts taking me to my minicab? And I said, because something happened on the street, Mum, you know. So there's a certain level where I'm thankful that they're older now, in their 90s, so they're not so conscious of maybe everything that's going on. But we can't have an event without full security. I mean, this actually has been going on like this for a very, very long time, to be honest with you. If we have a Jewish event, I mean, you know, you've got armed everything around you. And it's just so sad that everything has to be protected. But, you know, we get on with it. We carry on doing our ceremonies. We carry on doing the things. We're very much community-based, very much looking after one another, trying to make sure that the community is safe or feels a level of safety.
Now you are a believer in Yeshua. How did that come about?
Damascus Road experience, you know, it really was the Damascus Road, in Jesus saying, actually his words were deep. He said, I am who I said I am. Me not understanding that at the time, but when I look back now, and I knew immediately what he meant it was Jesus. It was our Messiah. And of course, when I look back, he actually spoke to me as a Jew, didn't he, really? He actually spoke to me directly, saying exactly what he said to Abraham, I am who I said I am. So, you know, it was an amazing thing, 24 hours. I'm going to be honest with you, Paul, I spent the first week of my salvation crying that we had rejected him. I couldn't handle that. I found it very difficult to handle that we had rejected our own Messiah. I mean, I'd repented from my sins, but I was groaning and crying. I actually had to go and get counseling, although I wasn't really going to church at that moment yet. But I was in so much pain about it, thinking that he was our Messiah and we rejected him. I found that really hard once I realized the truth. It was very hard for me to reconcile.
Now, Jews have many holidays, Rosh Hashanah, Purim, and Passover and the like. Should Christians explore these Jewish holidays and celebrate them themselves?
I think, you know, you don't have to be Jewish to receive the promises of Abraham and the promises that God has for you. But they are blessings. And, you know, when Jesus was baptized, why did Jesus need to be baptized? And he said, to fulfill all righteousness. These are scriptures. These are blessings. And actually, Jesus is the fulfillment of all the feasts. So you get a kind of deeper understanding of the Messiah. You get an enrichment. I call it his banqueting tables. So, you know, you can eat bread and water all your life and still go to heaven, but you can have a much fuller meal and have a lot more variety of foods. And it doesn't mean you're under any laws, of course not, but you are partaking and understanding some of the things that all these feasts mean, and all of them are pointing you straight to our our amazing Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach. All of it is fulfilled in him.
And of course, we've got to remember the Bible is a Jewish book, and nearly everybody who wrote the Bible was a Jew.
Absolutely. And I think, that's the attack that happened in 400 AD of erasing or trying to erase everything that was Jewish. I mean, I think permanently damaged the church from that point on. From that point on, it was never the wholeness of those 400 years. It always had this limp, shall we say, because it had detached something that was the anchor. I mean, if you don't understand the Jewishness, then you don't understand the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And if you don't understand the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you can't fully understand Yeshua, because that's his root. He's the root of David, right back. That's why Matthew 1 starts with the whole genealogy, because how important it is for everyone to understand it's the root of who we are.
What's your prayer today for Jews in the UK?
For strength, really. I'm not 100% sure it can be resolved. Maybe it's not going to be resolved. I think we are going into days of tremendous persecution, and as Christians, we will do too. So I just pray for strength and grace. I pray that the scales will fall off their eyes, that they may see and behold our Messiah. But I do pray that they find a place of grace during this time and during this period, that the Lord does help us in this time of tremendous warfare.
Do you think we will see Jews leaving the UK and coming here to Israel?
It's already happening. I actually know quite a few families that are already sold up.
Wow.
And they've actually moved. Yeah, on my friend's street, she lives in a very well-known area of Stanmore, and many families have already gone. Yeah.
Wow. What's your website for people who'd like to know more about the work that you do?
Thank you. Yes, it's nation2nation.org, and that's the number 2. So nation2nation.org. Thank you so much, Paul.
Well, Madeleine, thank you very much for sharing today.
It's been a delight to be with you and a joy to speak to someone there in the beloved Bethlehem. Lovely to speak to you.
Thank you for joining us today. Pray that God will move by his mighty power in the Holy Land and bring his peace.